Hey everybody, it's Reverend Bree, and I'm here to give you a little background on today's lesson. Today's lesson is one that I'm really excited about because there's so much to it, but let's stick to the part that we're studying today. It's about the story of Esther. And many of us have heard the story of Esther, probably in part or in whole, but we know a couple things for sure. Esther was, depending on the way you see the word, or a person who's an orphan. She was an orphan because she was not raised by her mother and father, but Esther had a lot of love. She had Mordecai who was there to guide her, send her into the palace, and even go to her when it was time to correct her. Esther was a woman who got to stand on the shoulders of Queen Vashti. Many of you, when you hear Vashti, you probably think of the AME's first woman bishop, but before that Vashti, or the Delta's Vashti, there was another one, and that's the queen. The queen was someone who was obviously, from what we can see in the text, where there's not a whole lot, what we can see for sure is that Vashti was a woman who knew what was right and wrong, who would not allow people to walk over her, and that should always be applauded. When we look at what Esther is most known for, we have to look at the fact that this began with Vashti. Vashti was at a party that her husband, Queen Xerxes, was having, and he had the party going and he was excited. So he called for Vashti to come into the room pretty much and parade her around everyone. Well, Vashti, being the black woman that she was, said she was not having it, and I appreciate that. She decided that she was not going to be the person to be paraded around in front of a group of men just because she was married to the king. And I would like to stop right there because many of us have been willing to be a trophy because we like the person we were married to. And we could take a cue from Vashti and realize I don't care who he or she might be. When it comes to someone who's going to take away your humanity or dignity, you always choose yourself. So we get to Esther, and Esther is standing on Vashti's shoulders. And I say that because Vashti said no, she would not come into the king. And Esther said, please let me come into the king, into his quarters, even though her head was on the line. You were not supposed to ask to be able to go into the king's quarter. But she decided to do this, and she did it for a very specific reason. Because her people's lives were on the line. Well, let's back up a little bit. How did she get in and people not know who she was? So you'll get to see in the text very clearly that Esther was trying to protect the Jews. Well, what they did not know and what the king didn't know was that Esther was a Jew. Mordecai helped Esther to go into the palace and actually become queen by pretending she wasn't a Jewish person. I know that there's a lot to be said about that, but let us just keep it funky. Many of us have done a lot of things when it came to survival, and Esther and Mordecai were trying to survive. So we can go and talk about right or wrong, but let us not forget survival was the real goal. Y'all know survival like when y'all be playing on them taxes, survival. You know survival like when your mama had her phone in your name because that was the only way y'all were going to be able to use the phone. So let's not pretend like we don't understand what this means. That's survival, and that was the goal. So Esther is in the palace. No one knows she's a Jew. Haman is a hater, and her people are on the line. And Mordecai goes to plead to her and tell her, listen, you have got to make sure the Jews are not killed. And I'm sure there was probably something in Esther that said, I'm good. I'm safe up in here, and I can get you in. I got a little clout. But he made it very clear, if the rest of us are going to die, you're going to die too, because it won't be long before they find out who you are. And so I appreciated that, she put on her big girl undies, and had it going on and decided, you know what, I'm going to make sure I do what I can to save my people. How many times have we really put our lives on the line to save a community? Because although Mordecai believed that it would come to her, there was nothing guaranteeing that she was actually going to be found out. And so, yeah, there was some risk, but not enough to make her do it. There had to be something in her that said, I love my people enough that I'll put myself on the line to do what needs to be done. And I can appreciate a woman like that. And so we get to see that Esther made a decision, yes, to save her people. But first she did something that, if we're honest, is probably unusual. She decided to fast and pray. And she didn't just do this by herself. She asked everyone else to do it. And I'm wondering how many times we're asked to do something and we think it's for somebody else, but it's really to save our lives. And that's what we're going to see in this text. You're going to see that she decides to say, okay, I'm going to fast and pray before I go before the king. And this is what I want you to know that you won't see in this part of the text. While Esther was fasting and praying and preparing to save her people, God kept the king up in the middle of the night, reminded him of something that Mordecai had done to make sure that not only was Esther working and not only were the people praying, but God was working on the king. And if you want to know another way this story really could have ended, if we think about it practically, Omarosa is the modern day Esther failed. She did go into the palace, but she did not care about her people. So it was really important that we know who Esther was, what she did, and that it really didn't have to go this way. If there's anything you take away from this, I want you to know when you're obedient to God and you have to take a, step out and put yourself out on a limb while you are praying and fasting and while you're making a decision, God is working things out in other places on your behalf. So fret not, don't trip, chocolate chip. It is all good. You pray, you fast, you do, you act, and God is already working on your behalf. I know you're going to enjoy this lesson, so go ahead and tweet me or Facebook me, Instagram me, Snapchat me at REV_BRI and tell me how you like it. See you at the next lesson.